There's a moment in your life when everything you believed about love collapses in silence. Not with a fight, not with a dramatic reveal, but quietly, almost imperceptibly. Like the light fading in a room you've been sitting in for years. That was the day I found out he cheated. If you're listening right now, please like this video, subscribe, and stay until the end. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about heartbreak, silent strength, and the kind of revenge that doesn't need to be loud. It's the kind that comes from living fully, rising higher and letting life itself write the final punchline. I didn't see it coming. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew us. For 4 years, I believed in what we had. I believed in late-night conversations, in stolen weekends, in whispered promises. I believed in every "I love you" he said like it was carved into stone. And for years, it was enough until it was in single quotes it started with small signs. Texts that he left open. Subtle defensiveness when I asked simple questions. Laughter at things I didn't understand. A shift in energy that made the air between us feel different, tense, electric in the wrong way. I dismissed them at first. I told myself I was imagining things. That love wasn't perfect. That maybe I was just insecure. But insecurity is rarely wrong when intuition begins to scream. Then came the day I stumbled on his phone. Not with malice, not with suspicion that had boiled into obsession, but with curiosity. A quiet question that had been haunting me for weeks. And the screen told me everything I didn't want to see. Messages, photos, plans that didn't include me, names I had never heard. Names that should never have existed in our life together. My heart didn't break all at once. It fractured slowly, each piece dropping into a void I hadn't known existed. I left the apartment without a word, without confrontation, without even a look back. I walked for hours in the city that had once felt like home, feeling my life shift beneath my feet. When I finally returned, he asked me where I had been. I said nothing. He smiled nervously, and in that moment, I realized something crucial. His guilt was surface level, performative. He wasn't thinking about me. He wasn't thinking about us. He was thinking about avoiding discomfort. I cried that night. Not softly, but the kind of cry that shakes every fiber of your being. I questioned everything: my judgment, my worth, my ability to trust. I wondered how someone could take 4 years of love and disregard it so easily. The next weeks were a fog. I showed up at work, answered emails, smiled at friends, nodded at family, all while my chest felt heavy, as if I were carrying an anchor no one could see. People noticed. They asked questions. I said I was tired. I said I had a lot on my mind. It was easier than telling them the truth, that I had been betrayed by the person I had loved the most, but pain has a way of clarifying things. It sharpens your vision, cuts away illusions, and forces you to see reality in its rawest form. I started noticing patterns I had ignored before: how he had dismissed my needs, how he had prioritized convenience over connection, how he had assumed my love was a given. Unchangeable, unworthy of protection. And slowly, I began to understand. My heartbreak was not the end. It was a turning point. I began small, tentative steps toward reclaiming myself. I canceled plans I had made for him. I started saying no. I focused on my career, my health, my friends, my hobbies, the parts of me that had existed before him. The parts he had overlooked in his selfishness and in the quiet of those nights. When the city slept and I felt my own pulse for the first time in weeks, I made a silent promise: I would rise. Not for him, not for revenge, but for myself. I would become someone whose life was full and unshakable. Someone whose happiness was no longer dependent on the betrayal of another. Months passed. I threw myself into work, into travel, into moments that reminded me of my own strength. I didn't think about him as often. I didn't check his social media. I didn't seek closure. I sought myself. And yet, part of me wanted to see what would happen to him. Not out of cruelty, but curiosity. Could someone who hurt so deeply feel the emptiness they created? Could someone who assumed love was theirs, without effort, ever understand the consequences of betrayal? That answer would come slowly, in subtle ways, in moments that were quiet but not unnoticed. Because life has a way of arranging its own justice. And in time, I would see him not triumphant, not sorry, but diminished in the ways that only truth can reveal. I learned to walk through life lightly, carrying my heartbreak not as a weapon, but as a lesson. Every failure, every tear, every sleepless night had sculpted me into someone who could withstand anything. And in that strength, I found an unexpected joy, freedom from expectation, freedom from pain, freedom from the illusion that someone else's choices could define my worth. It wasn't revenge yet, not overtly, not dramatically, but it was preparation. It was growth. It was quiet, powerful, and unstoppable. And the story was only beginning. Asterisk, when heartbreak first hits, it feels endless. It's like standing in a storm with no shelter, with rain cutting through you, cold and unrelenting. But there's a strange truth I learned in those months after discovering his betrayal. The storm doesn't destroy you, it refines you, if you're still with me. Please like this video, subscribe, and stay until the end. Because the next part is where my life starts to shift in ways even I hadn't imagined. And the subtle, quiet revenge begins after the initial shock. I did what many do. I withdrew. Not dramatically, not for show, but quietly. I stopped seeking validation from anyone outside of myself. I stopped asking for attention or approval. I let the world continue as it was while I rebuilt myself piece by piece, brick by brick. I started small. Mornings became rituals of self-care I had once ignored. I ran again, longer distances than ever, feeling my lungs fill with clarity instead of grief. I journaled not to record him, not to analyze him, but to understand myself, to hear my own thoughts without interference. I began reading books I had once passed over, attending workshops, and even reconnecting with friends I had allowed to drift away in the haze of our relationship. And then came the work. My career, which had always been a secondary concern, suddenly became my focus. I realized that I could channel this heartbreak into something productive. I'd dive into projects, ask questions no one dared ask, propose solutions no one thought of, and quietly became indispensable. What I didn't expect was how quickly my confidence began to return, not just the hollow confidence of pretending to be okay, but the deep, unshakable kind. The kind that radiates without trying. The kind that shifts the energy in a room. It was during one of those months late at night in the office, reviewing a project he had once dismissed, that I saw him again. He hadn't changed much physically, but his demeanor had. He was uneasy, tentative, even polite. He sought my opinion on things he would have ignored before. His questions were careful, his tone softer, almost as if he had realized, maybe too late, that I had become someone who mattered independently of him, and I had. It was quiet at first, subtle, no confrontations, no dramatic statements. Just me performing my responsibilities flawlessly, leading without anyone needing to recognize it publicly, thriving in a way that didn't require his approval or even his acknowledgement. But the ripple effect was immediate. Others noticed. Colleagues who had once overlooked me began seeking my advice. Senior management started including me in decisions I had never been part of before. And the man who had cheated on me, who thought his betrayal had left me broken, was now, quietly, relying on me. I remember one moment vividly. We were in a meeting discussing a new project. He stumbled over a question. I stepped in calmly, suggesting a path forward. The team nodded in agreement. And for a moment, I caught his eye. I saw a flash of recognition, maybe even regret. He had underestimated the strength that betrayal had birthed. Months passed. I kept my distance emotionally. I didn't gloat. I didn't flaunt success. My revenge wasn't dramatic or spiteful, it was silent, unassuming. And all the more effective because it was real. He began to miss deadlines subtly, overcomplicate tasks, and defer decisions to me. The power balance had shifted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I became the person everyone turned to, including him. And yet, despite the growing strength within me, there were nights when the pain resurfaced. Nights when I questioned why someone I loved could betray me so completely. Nights when tears came without warning, reminding me of the vulnerability I had survived. But even in those moments, I understood something vital. Heartbreak is temporary. Growth is permanent. Pain is real. Power is earned. And the real revenge isn't seeing him fail, it's thriving in a way he can't touch. By the time a year had passed, the man who had cheated on me was no longer a central figure in my life. He was present, yes, still part of the same social and professional circles, but his influence, control, and arrogance had quietly diminished. And I had grown into someone who could walk past the memory of betrayal without fear, without anger, and without dependence. This is when I began to realize the full scope of my transformation. I didn't need closure from him. I didn't need apologies or confessions. I didn't need to watch him suffer or stumble. My life, my choices, my growth, my success was enough. That was the ultimate punchline. The life he thought he could disrupt had become the life he could only observe silently, powerless to change, and yet I knew the story wasn't fully over. There would be moments, encounters, subtle reminders that he had once thought himself untouchable. Moments when I would see his regret flicker in small, realistic ways, a hesitation in conversation, a fleeting glance, a sigh of acknowledgement. These moments were neither cruel nor dramatic. They were quiet, almost natural. And they were enough because I had learned that revenge doesn't need to be shouted. It doesn't need to be public. It doesn't require a witness. True, poetic revenge is living fully, rising above, and letting life itself render justice in the form of your own success, your own peace, your own self-worth. There's a peculiar satisfaction in quiet justice. It isn't loud. It doesn't involve confrontation or spectacle. It is subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye. But if you've been patient, if you've endured, and if you've chosen growth over bitterness, it arrives and it changes everything. If you're still watching, thank you. Please like this video, subscribe, and stay until the end. This is the part where heartbreak transforms into empowerment, where betrayal becomes a catalyst for your life, and where the one who hurt you becomes the punchline. After a year of rebuilding myself, investing in my own growth, and carefully reclaiming my power, the world began to notice. Friends, colleagues, even casual acquaintances commented on the change, my confidence, my presence, the way I carried myself with calm authority. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And the man who once betrayed me began to notice. It started subtly. He would ask for my opinion on projects that were once his alone. He would deflect questions toward me in meetings. Sometimes, in casual encounters, I would catch him glancing at me in recognition. A flicker of something unspoken in his eyes. Perhaps regret. Perhaps realization. Perhaps fear. But I didn't acknowledge it. Not directly. I never flaunted my growth. My revenge wasn't to humiliate him, it was to live fully, to rise above, to thrive in ways he could never touch. And that, I realized, was the most potent form of justice. I began taking on leadership roles I had once dreamed of but never dared pursue. While under his shadow, I built relationships based on respect, trust, and competence. I guided teams, led projects, and quietly became indispensable not through manipulation, but through integrity, expertise, and consistency. And then the moment came that truly shifted the balance. A new executive initiative required someone to oversee a major branch expansion, a project he had assumed he would control. I was offered the role. It was a culmination of all my effort, patience, and strategy. And he, the man who once thought he could break me with a single betrayal, had to report to me in that context. I remember our first meeting after my promotion. His smile was polite, measured, cautious. He said all the right things, but there was a subtle tension in the way he carried himself. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to comment on the past. My presence, calm and assured, said everything. Every interaction after that reflected the shift. He sought my guidance, deferred decisions to me, and quietly acknowledged my authority, though he never admitted it aloud. He became a participant in my success rather than an obstacle, and in that role, I saw the depth of his regret, not loud, not dramatic, but real. I didn't let the past dictate my actions. I didn't exact revenge with cruelty. Instead, I lived my life with grace, determination, and purpose. I invested in myself, my career, my passions, and my happiness. I traveled, learned, and surrounded myself with people who valued me. And in doing so, I found something far greater than retaliation, peace. There were moments, of course, when memories of betrayal would surface. A song, a place, a casual encounter, brief flashes of the pain I had endured. But instead of bitterness, these memories reminded me of how far I had come. They reminded me that strength is born from suffering, that self-worth is cultivated through adversity, and that the only validation I truly needed was my own. I learned to recognize the subtle ways life serves justice. The man who once hurt me became, in his own way, the punchline. Not through embarrassment or shame, but through reality itself, while he remained tethered to his arrogance and poor choices. I had become free, empowered, and fulfilled. Friends would ask me if I ever thought about confronting him. I didn't need to. True victory is quiet. True empowerment doesn't require witnesses. The world sees it in the way you walk, the calm in your voice, the choices you make, and the happiness you cultivate. And that, I realized, was far more satisfying than any dramatic confrontation. Years later, when I reflect on what happened, I understand it completely. Betrayal hurt me, yes. But it also taught me. It forced me to confront myself, to redefine my boundaries, to cultivate resilience, and to invest in my own growth. And in doing so, it transformed a moment of weakness into a lifetime of strength. He cheated on me, thinking it would destroy my life. He didn't anticipate that the woman he hurt would rise above, not with vengeance, but with life itself. I became unstoppable. I became whole. And he became the punchline of a story I wrote with my own strength, courage, and dignity. That is the power of surviving heartbreak. Not just to recover, but to transform it into something beautiful, something lasting, something entirely yours, and in the quiet of my own success. I finally understood some people reveal themselves not through their words, but through the space they leave in your life. And some betrayals become the catalysts for your greatest triumphs. I walk today free, empowered, and unshakable. And the one who betrayed me, he is a part of the past, a cautionary echo of what I no longer allow to define me.